Kia ora. Today in KLTV's coverage of local body elections, we meet Bruce Rogan, one of 4 candidates standing for the Kaipara District Council Mayoralty. He shares with us his plans for the Kaipara, should he be successful. Hello and welcome, Bruce. Now, for many, the name Bruce Rogan is synonymous with the Mangawhai wastewater debacle and your determination to hold those responsible for its failures to account. But beyond that, who is Bruce Rogan and why have you decided to run for mayor?
Yeah, well, it's a fair characterisation that I am synonymous with the wastewater debacle. But it certainly wasn't something that I wanted to be involved in. As I got into retirement age, I would much rather be fishing and spending time with my grandchildren. But the scale and scope of what was done to the Kaipara community really demanded somebody did something about it. And the council, it's interesting that the elected council at the time that this whole thing blew up, were actually starting to come to the party about doing something about it. I was in dialogue with the then CEO, one Steve Ruru, about having a series of meetings to identify what we could do together to sort out who was responsible and bring them to book. And when the government got wind of the fact that that was happening, they jumped in very quickly and sacked the council, and the commissioners came in and cut off any further communication between me and the CEO. So we couldn't take it any further, and so we had said, well, look, if we can't bring this to some sort of resolution that's fair to the community, and we're not saying we want a free sewage system or anything like that, we just wanted a fair result, then we'll have to ask the courts to intervene. And that's when the government jumped in and developed retrospective legislation to prevent us having any access to the courts, which a lot of people in New Zealand, not just Kaipara people, but a lot of people in New Zealand think is one of the most anti-democratic, heinous things that the government has ever done. So I want to be mayor because there's a lot of unfinished business, and I want to do what I can to bring justice to the Kaipara community, and by no means just the Mangawhai people.
You were a councillor in the KDC from 2001 to 2004. Do you think the Kaipara is in a better or worse position than it was a decade ago?
Much, much worse. Yes, there's a huge cover-up going on as to what the real state of the books is. All of the money that is taken from people by way of rates under pretexts like depreciation, development contributions, it's all been basically given to the banks to keep the place afloat. So the problem is that they are maintaining a kind of sham balanced books situation, but all the money is being used to pay off debt. So there's no money left for doing any of the developmental work or maintenance of infrastructure or anything else. And the only way that can happen is if they massively increase the rates, which this community simply cannot afford.
Moving forward, what do you think the greatest challenges will be, both for the new mayor and the district as a whole?
Well, the greatest challenge will be to re-establish some level of trust between an elected council and its communities. I think people are very cynical, and I don't know how the voter turnout is going to be, but I wouldn't be in the least bit surprised if it's quite low, because I have spoken to a lot of people who say, well, what's the point? The government's already stitched it all up anyway, and democracy's not coming back, and they won't listen to us anyway. So my commitment would be that I and any council that I lead will listen to the people and listen to the individual communities and heed what they're saying.
So as you say, robust governance and regaining trust will be paramount in the newly formed council. How do you plan to achieve that?
Well, really, it's quite simple. The first thing is to recognise that you're there to serve the people and not to serve some other vested interests, such as banks or the interests of other politicians elsewhere in the system. You're there because the people put you there, and so it is the people who you must serve. And I think I've demonstrated a pretty high degree of skill at serving the people in my role as the chairman of the Ratepayers Association, which is one of the largest ratepayers associations in the country, and in terms of relative to the population, it's way the biggest. And it still gets attendances of 200 people at meetings such as the one we had the other day. So I've got a track record there that I think I can defend and say that I am focused on the people who I serve, and I have a profound respect for democracy, because I think democracy is the thing that distinguishes us from barbarism. And if we don't protect our democracy, we end up like a Syria or an Eritrea.
You're from Mangawhai, and the Kaipara is a district of many small communities. How do you hope to create a sense of unity and collaboration?
Well, I'm not quite so wedded to the idea of unity, because I think that if by unity you mean one size fits all, then I'm really not disposed to that. What I think is necessary in a place like Kaipara is to recognise and cherish diversity. And there are many different community aspirations. Some communities have no aspiration to grow and attract huge numbers of additional people, and some do. And the role of council is to suss out what people actually want, and then, within the resources available, to facilitate them getting that. And that's how I see. So I would be encouraging councillors from the various wards to get out and talk to their communities and bring back what the community's aspirations are. We will also, under my watch, have web pages that are accessible by the communities where they can say what they want, where individuals and groups within the communities can say what they want, and we can get a dialogue going about, well, okay, you say you want that, now it's going to cost that much, so how are we going to get there? And you know, match people's aspirations to the resources available.
So following on from that, how will you encourage innovation and economic growth across the region?
Well, largely by getting out of the way. And instead of imposing a top-down solution on people, we'll simply ask them to identify what they would like to achieve. And bureaucrats and elected officials don't have they don't have the answers to every question. The answers lie in the communities, and it is simply a matter of facilitating the answers coming out from the communities, which it's not difficult. It's a matter of having respect for people, and when they come up with something that doesn't seem to make sense, actually taking the time to listen to find out why it makes sense to them if it doesn't make sense to you. No. But I think there's all sorts of horticultural opportunities within the Kaipara that are just lying there, potential to come to fruition. There are manufacturing opportunities. There are activities in the arts and culture and craft that are all sorts of things and ventures like tourism and.
So speaking of tourism, in terms of infrastructure, what do you think are our most pressing issues?
I would say the health and well-being of our communities is the most important infrastructural concern. So making sure that people have access to clean, safe drinking water, and I don't mean that everybody's got to be connected to some town supply. I simply mean that everybody's got to understand what's involved in having clean water, even if it's coming from their own tanks. And obviously safe disposal of human waste. so that we deal to the question of our general health and well-being. And then after that comes things like the roads. And we have to recognise that we have an awful lot of road per head of population here. And so we can't have 4-lane highways with tar seal joining every village to every other village. We have to cut our cloth to fit our cap to fit our cloth. And one way that I imagine we could make huge progress would be to put the maintenance of our roading infrastructure back in local hands, so that we have roading gangs who live in the communities and with the necessary machinery to maintain the roads locally. Nothing works better than having a community knowing the names of the people who are looking after their roads, and having their phone numbers and being able to ring them and say, there's a pothole here, right? And the person lives there, so they want it fixed too. Instead of these contracts with overseas organisations that come and do the absolute minimum and pay their management 9/10 of the money that they're collecting in rates from the community.
Fair point.
Long answer.
But a fair point. Earlier on in that you mentioned waste and water. If you become mayor, will the district council have much influence over environmental issues?
Well, it's an interesting question because there's a bit of a misconception. The regional council has an overarching legislated responsibility for environmental matters, but they don't do anything, relatively speaking. They're not charged with doing anything, and they don't have the rating power to get the money to actually do the building of sewage schemes. So that's all left to district councils. So district councils have to answer to the regional council for things like water quality and sewage treatment, etc. But the actual doing lies with the district council.
So finally, you say a vote for Bruce Rogan is a vote for democracy. Can you give us 3 key reasons why people should vote for you?
Well, if they want local government rather than government by remote control, I'm the man for them. If they want absolute open local government, I'm the man for them. And if they want scrupulous, no holds barred honesty from their local government organisation, then I'm the man for them.
Thank you for your time today and all the best for your campaign.
Thank you.
You can follow our coverage of the local elections in the latest issue of the Kaipara Lifestarter or on our website. I'm Joanne Speechley, ka kite anō.